Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This audio uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Today we're diving into the Oxford Handbook of Thinking and Reasoning. It's edited by Keith J. Holyoak and Robert G. Morrison.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this one.
It's a pretty hefty collection of insights. But don't worry, we're here to break it down. Think of us as your guides to the fascinating world of how our minds work.
It really is fascinating. It's like having a backstage pass to all the intricate processes going on in our heads. From making simple decisions to coming up with groundbreaking ideas.
Exactly. And it isn't just for academics. This book explores questions we've probably all pondered at some point. Are we truly rational beings? What makes some people more creative than others? Can we train our brains to be better thinkers?
All really good questions. What's really cool is that this handbook acts as a sort of choose-your-own-adventure guide. It's divided into 7 sections, each tackling a different facet of thinking and reasoning. You can jump into the chapters that spark your interest, whether that's deductive reasoning or mental models or even the concept of genius.
Okay, now you've piqued my curiosity. Let's break those sections down a bit further. We've got general approaches to thinking and reasoning, which sounds like a great place to start. Then there's deductive, inductive, and abductive reasoning. Could you unpack those for us quickly?
Yeah, so deductive reasoning is about drawing specific conclusions from general principles, kind of like classic Sherlock Holmes deduction.
Oh, I see.
Inductive reasoning is the reverse, starting with specific observations and then forming a general conclusion.
Yeah.
And abductive reasoning, well, that's more about coming up with the best explanation for what you observe, even if it's not 100% certain.
Ah, so that's how we piece together clues and make sense of the world. Now, let's not forget judgment and decision-making, which seems particularly relevant to our everyday lives. And of course, we can't skip over problem-solving, intelligence, and creative thinking. That's where things get really juicy, right?
Absolutely. And the section on ontogeny, phylogeny, language, and culture explores how factors like our development, our evolutionary history, and cultural background all influence how we think. It's mind-blowing to think about how much goes into shaping our thought processes.
It really is.
Yeah.
Then there's modes of thinking, which sounds like a deep dive into the different ways our minds operate. And finally, we wrap up with thinking in practice, which seems like it bridges the gap between theory and real-world applications.
Exactly. And it's worth noting that this edition builds upon an earlier version published in 2005. That in itself tells you how much research in this field is constantly evolving and how our understanding of the mind continues to deepen.
So are you telling me this entire book is like a giant toolbox for upgrading our mental software? Sign me up. There are a few chapters that particularly caught my eye, like Bayesian inference. I have to admit that one sounds a bit intimidating, but also incredibly intriguing.
Yeah, it can sound a little complex at first, but it's actually more relevant than you might think. It's a way of understanding how we update our beliefs and make predictions based on new information. Imagine you believe something to be true, but then you encounter new evidence that challenges that belief. Bayesian inference helps explain how we reconcile those conflicting pieces of information and arrive at a more accurate understanding.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's like our brains are constantly running these complex calculations in the background without us even realizing it. And then there's the chapter on mental models, which really got me thinking. It explores how we create internal representations of the world to solve problems. Is that right?
Precisely. Imagine them as mental maps we use to navigate complex situations. These models help us understand cause and effect, predict outcomes, and even imagine alternative possibilities. The book even uses a visual, depicting the relationships between different mental terms to help illustrate how these models work.
Okay, now that's what I call bringing abstract concepts to life. There's one more chapter I'm dying to discuss. Heuristics and biases. It always fascinates me how our brains use these mental shortcuts to make quick decisions, even if it sometimes leads to errors in judgment.
Yeah, it's a classic example of how our intuition can be both powerful and flawed. It highlights the fact that we're not always as rational as we like to think. These biases, like confirmation bias, where we favor information that supports our pre-existing beliefs, can often lead us astray.
It makes you wonder how much of our thinking is actually objective and how much is influenced by these hidden biases. I'm starting to feel like we're just scratching the surface of this incredible book.
Oh, definitely. We are, and there's so much more to explore. We've barely touched upon the idea of genius, for instance, and how much of it is nature versus nurture. Yeah, it's a question that has intrigued thinkers for centuries, and the book delves into some fascinating research on the topic. It suggests that genius isn't just about a high IQ, but often involves a unique combination of cognitive abilities, personality traits, and a supportive environment that nurtures those talents.
Oh, so like a perfect storm of factors.
Yes, exactly.
It makes you wonder if there are hidden geniuses out there who just haven't had the right opportunities to flourish.
Right. It certainly highlights the importance of fostering intellectual curiosity and providing the right resources for people to reach their full potential.
Absolutely. And speaking of reaching our potential, this handbook doesn't just dwell on theory. It dedicates an entire section to thinking and practice, showing how these concepts play out in real-world fields, like science, law, medicine, and even music.
It's really interesting to see how these abstract ideas can be applied in such diverse areas.
Yeah, what's fascinating about this section is that it demonstrates how understanding thinking and reasoning can be a powerful tool in various fields.
For sure.
It's like a bridge between the abstract and the practical, taking these complex ideas about logic and decision-making and showing how they can be used to improve our performance, innovation, and even our understanding of different disciplines.
Exactly. For example, in the chapter on scientific thinking, we can see how scientists use reasoning and evidence to develop theories and test hypotheses. It also highlights the challenges of overcoming biases in research, which is something we touched on earlier.
Right. It's a reminder that even the most brilliant minds can be susceptible to those unconscious biases
Yeah.
that can skew our perceptions and interpretations.
Yeah, and then there's the chapter on legal reasoning, which is all about how lawyers use logic and argumentation to build cases and persuade judges and juries.
Fascinating. It makes you realize how crucial critical thinking skills are, not just in a courtroom, but in everyday life as well. We're constantly bombarded with information. And being able to analyze evidence, construct arguments, and make sound judgments is more important than ever.
Couldn't agree more. The book really emphasizes the practical relevance of these cognitive skills. And it doesn't shy away from the complexities of these processes. It delves into the nuances of decision-making, problem-solving, and even the creative process.
I'm curious, what did you find most surprising or insightful about the book so far?
That's a good question. One thing that really stood out to me was the emphasis on the interconnectedness of different cognitive processes. It's not like our brains have separate compartments for logic, creativity, and decision-making. These processes are all intertwined, influencing and shaping each other in fascinating ways.
So it's more like a web than a series of separate boxes.
Exactly, and that's what makes studying the mind so captivating. It's a constant journey of discovery.
Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, this handbook's evolution from its previous edition.
Right. It's a testament to how rapidly this field is advancing. New research is constantly emerging, challenging our assumptions and deepening our understanding of the human mind.
It's exciting to think about what new discoveries are yet to come.
For sure, it makes you wonder what new insights await us in the years to come.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey exploring the intricate workings of our minds. I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the complexity and power of human thought.
Me too. It's amazing to consider all the different factors that contribute to how we think and reason.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Absolutely. This book is a treasure trove of knowledge and insights that can benefit anyone who wants to understand how they think and how to think better.
It's a great reminder that we're all capable of growing and evolving our thinking abilities.
Couldn't agree more.
But even with all this knowledge, there are still mysteries to unravel, right?
Absolutely. The human mind is incredibly complex, and there's always more to learn.
Well, before we leave our listeners with that tantalizing thought, let's quickly recap what we've covered today. We explored the 7 sections of the Oxford Handbook of Thinking and Reasoning, each tackling a different aspect of how we think and make decisions.
Right. We talked about everything from deductive reasoning to mental models, heuristics and biases to the concept of genius.
And we discussed how these concepts apply to real-world scenarios in fields like science, law, and medicine, highlighting the practical value of understanding these processes.
Exactly. It's not just theoretical knowledge. It's about understanding how our minds work so we can make better decisions and live more fulfilling lives.
And perhaps most importantly, we touched upon the ever-evolving nature of this field, emphasizing that our journey of understanding the human mind is far from over.
There's always more to discover.
Exactly. So for our listeners who are eager to continue this journey of self-discovery, we can't recommend this book enough. The Oxford Handbook of Thinking and Reasoning is like a comprehensive guide to understanding your own mental processes, and it's packed with insights that can help you think more clearly, make better decisions, and even become more creative.
It's a valuable resource for anyone who wants to unlock their cognitive potential. Whether you're a student, a professional, or simply someone who's curious about how your mind works.
And the best part is you don't have to be a cognitive scientist to understand it. The book is written in a clear and accessible style, making even complex concepts relatable and engaging.
It's really well written, and it's full of fascinating examples and case studies.
So if any of the topics we've discussed have piqued your interest, we encourage you to dive into the full book and continue exploring.
Yeah, you won't regret it.
You can find a link to purchase the book in the show notes. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more mindful moments. We're always on the lookout for thought-provoking books and ideas to share with you.
We believe that nourishing your mind is an ongoing journey, and we're here to provide you with the tools and insights to keep growing and expanding your understanding of yourself and the world around you.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. Ethos's book suggests our thinking is shaped by a multitude of factors, from our evolutionary history to our cultural background. What does that mean for our own sense of individuality? Are we truly the authors of our own thoughts, or are we products of these complex influences? It's something to ponder as you continue your own exploration of the human mind. Thanks for joining us on this mindful moment, and until next time, keep those minds engaged.